And we're joined in the studio by two experts to share their expertise and personal takes and, of course, analysis of what's been developing so far. On my right is nuclear engineering professor at Seoul National University, Seok-Yun. Thank you for staying with us since our previous newscast. And on my left is Dr. Woo Jung-yup, a research fellow at the Sejong Institute. Thank you so much for making time at this very inconvenient hour.
Thanks for having me today.
Well, first of all, let's start with the top-down approach from here on. The statement that was issued, I'm sure some would feel it's a promising start, and others might say it was rather deflating.
I think there might be too much expectation on the outcome of the summit today because this summit was made to make a solution to the nuclear issues of the North Korea. But the content of the statement made by two leaders today did not really fully elaborate how two countries are going to denuclearize North Korea. So it is important that two leaders of United States and North Korea have met for the first time in the history. That's a good start. But it shows that it's very difficult to agree from both sides on the denuclearizing process of North Korea. So I think that it will take much more time to get it done for the denuclearization process of North Korea in the future.
Right. To start the engine and take off is one thing. Landing is a very difficult task that not many people can do. It'll take a lot of concerted efforts, time, and patience from all sides involved. And Professor, before we started our newscast, we were sort of discussing about the election in South Korea. That would be the top story, if not for this historic summit. How do you think this event and the outcome might influence South Korean voters' sentiments, where they stand, perhaps not in the immediate election that's coming up tomorrow in a few hours' time, but in the long run?
For certain issues to have an impact on voters in this time, because people has to know the information, then perceive it as information to form his or her attitude toward the candidates. But now we have only a couple hours left to cast a vote for the individual voters. So I think time is too short for voters to digest the information today to form their attitude toward certain parties or certain political candidates. But in the long run, that if United States and North Korea could not produce any fruitful outcome regarding North Korea's denuclearization, then there will be certainly arising concerns mainly from the conservative side that United States is not anymore really taking care of South Korea's security.
Right. Concerns from the conservative concerns will be rising from here on if we don't see any positive outcome from what we've established today between Kim and Trump. Now, turning to Professor Seo, we were talking about radiation and radiation leaks and quality up north. Speaking about the nuclear tests and its residual effects, what about the earthquakes that we've been experiencing recently? Is there any connection with the nuclear activity?
Are you talking about the earthquake in the southern Pohang region, for example?
Yes.
Or actually, it's just, there is a possibility, but it's just a remote possibility. And it's just too far, first of all. And second of all, their testing has been done actually, the latest one was in September last year. So it's been almost like 7-8 months. And it's pretty hard to make any connection between the sixth test in DPRK and recent earthquakes over here. It's maybe just a coincidence, but I don't see any connection in between.
Okay, that's a relief.
Separate event.
There were some voices of concerns making certain speculations. But what about the sudden weapons advancements in North Korea? It seemed to have certainly made some big, long strides after Kim Jong-un came into power. What would you attribute to this accelerated progression?
I don't think it's accelerated. It's been done for the past 25 years. They've been working exactly right on the clock. Tick, tack,
So
tick,
Kim
tack.
Jong-un was just carrying on
Exactly.
from
He was
already
just
carried out
turned
framework.
out to be at the very end, actually at the exit. So the term actually, towards and more, all the efforts that have been spent over the past 20 years have been really being producing fruits at the last several years. and just Kim Jong-un happens to be at the last minute there at the right time. Exactly. So he's the beneficiary of all these efforts for the past 25 years. It's not just happened overnight. So I don't think there's any speed up process, but just a steady progress that's been made, and then it just culminated last year.
Well, certainly he did not play any role in slowing it down.
No, I don't think so. He did make a contribution to make it faster, but it was not like just a quantum jump. It's been accumulating so far, and then it just was culminating in last September. So he was lucky.
Right. If it weren't for his predecessor, his father and grandfather's legacy, which is nuclear power, a nuclear state, that's been their main goal. If not for that, would Kim Jong-un have been much more focused and much more quick to open up to the world in terms of being working towards an economically developed North Korea?
It's a tough question because it's a pretty much complicated, nonlinear, non-dimensional equation, set of equations, and we have to be thinking of all those initial conditions, boundary conditions. It's hard to solve, but if I were in his shoes, it might have been a different approach, but I can hardly imagine DPRK not developing its nuclear weapon because it's been there to start with.
Right.
So it's very hard to imagine DPRK without any involving any development in this work. So from that viewpoint, I would really say DPRK is inseparable from these nuclear weapons. So even though he came up with this idea of Pyeongjin, this collaborative actually development between nuclear weapons on the one hand and the economic development on the other, but certainly nuclear came first, and then he sort of realized that he was done. Now he's moving over to economic development and lifting all those sanctions and basically normalization of the relationship with the United States. So it's just taking one step at a time. So I can hardly imagine DPRK without developing any nuclear weapons by themselves.
All right, so it's not that Kim Jong-un needed to do it to validate his control or power as a leader, but rather it was a natural progression and a process.
It was very carefully planned and then just executed one at a time.
Okay, turning to you again, Dr. Wu, it looks like there were mentions about U.S. investments in North Korea. So, of course, economic benefits for North Korea does mean U.S. investments in North Korea. And I think it works in a multitude of ways. It could mean it could be beneficial for North Korea, not just in terms of what they gain in terms of business and economic prosperity, but with U.S. assets planted in North Korea. Would that mean America would have to be more concerned about any drastic actions they would take against North Korea now that they are more closely interconnected?
I think in the long run that the U.S. and enterprises in the United States can invest in North Korea, but I think it's in the very long run because denuclearization of North Korea does not automatically lead to the new environment for the global investment into North Korea. Because even if you denuclearize itself, North Korea has to establish a new system, new law, and new environment for the businesses to safely invest in the country. And North Korea has a different political system that are very much different from most countries in the world, and they are not providing any legal safeguards to the global entities to invest. So I think that when global entities and the U.S. firms are ready to invest in North Korea, that means that United States does not have any reason to drastically attack North Korea or thinking of any drastic measure or military measures against North Korea. So I think that in the long run that the investment by the United States into North Korea can be the guarantor of the North Korea's safety, but when global firms and the U.S. firms decide to invest in North Korea, I think North Korea is already a safe country to invest.
Right. You were talking about how unique of a place North Korea is. You need to understand its culture, and after understanding its culture, you might have a lot more to learn still if you want to do business there. As we have learned from the Kaesong Industrial Venture on our part, we have learned we still have a long way to go in terms of understanding their needs and wants. in that light, in that tune, how would you rate Donald Trump's approach in terms of striking a deal or holding a conversation with Kim Jong-un? It seems like they have set a rather amicable atmosphere and established a sort of friendship. And I guess we could rate that highly?
I think it's a very good start between two leaders who have nearly 75 years of animosity against each other. So I think that we cannot expect any rapid investment, any rapid changes on the Korean Peninsula, but this kind of meeting will eventually lead to the peaceful environment on the Korean Peninsula. So I think that President Trump, today President Trump showed the video clips to the media that which was shown to the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un today, that North Korea's future can be a brighter one if North Korean leader changes his strategic mind on it. So I think that that's what President Trump tried to tell Kim Jong-un today, that North Korea's future can be different if Kim Jong-un made up his mind on the nuclear issues.
Right, a bit of show and tell to sweeten the deal. And of course, another interesting fact about the two leaders is they're not your average, ordinary, usual leaders of powerhouses. They are novices in some sense in terms of political realm, and they are very unconventional in their approach and their mannerisms in terms of communicating with the rest of the world. Could there be a sudden change of heart or a rude awakening, and that might affect their future choices drastically because of who they are, because of how different they are compared to conventional leaders?
I think one of the biggest uncertainty that was produced from today's summit was that, very strangely, United States shows a goodwill without getting virtually nothing from North Korea in return. So that means that United States can say that now U.S. provide what they can provide to North Korea without getting anything from North Korea. That means that now it's North Korea's turn to show goodwill to the President Trump and the United States.
Or else.
Yes. So if North Korea failed to deliver something is expected from the United States, which can be delaying in the process of the negotiation and delaying in delivering any measures that lead U.S. to believe that North Korea is in the direction of the denuclearizing itself, then President Trump can suddenly change his mind that now his time is up and now I have to change my approach to North Korea, no more goodwills. And he might can say that now another military options on the table, another maximum pressure. So I think that uncertainty is still remain.
Right, a door is still left open ajar even when North Korea showed goodwill by willing to dismantle a nuclear test site and releasing 3 U.S. detainees. After that, Trump said thanks, but summit's off.
Right.
So perhaps that could happen again. We hope such approaches in terms of his philosophy of art of the deal would not be executed any further, because it really puts everyone else in a very uncomfortable position, the uncertainty.
Yes. So one of the elements that they agreed is that now there will be the negotiation between Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and his counterpart in North Korea in the future to expedite the process of things described in the joint statement today. So if North Korea is not delivering something to President Trump for him to say that this is what he achieved, I think it's still possible that President Trump can change his mind, and now he will again show him the maximum pressure card or military option card again.
Right. We will we'll plant our hopes on the 2 intelligent chiefs or ex-intelligent chiefs who have rich experience in understanding another culture, another system.
Yeah.
Right. Professor, turning to you again, going back to '92, the joint declaration, I guess we could say it failed. What can we learn from it so as to not repeat that mistake in terms of we're still etching out the details for what we could say is a substantial historic declaration or a joint statement from here on? How would you advise the sides involved in working towards establishing something that could guarantee peace and denuclearization, and of course learning from the mistakes of the '92 declaration?
It's a tough question because looks like Kim Jong-un has learned a lot.
Right.
Actually, he's learned the lessons, and then probably he has read the book, The Art of the Deal, written by Trump, and somehow he has already mastered the art of the deal. He was apparently, to my eyes and ears, he was a much better dealer than Trump, in the sense that, you see, not just those statements in 1992 and so many other ones that followed, 2005, and you just name it. You see, every time they made some promises, and then DPRK just simply walked away. They just took it and then walk away. And then this time, this joint statement is not even to that level. I was really looking at item number 3, which should have been placed at the very top, but it was placed item 3. It was relating to denuclearization, and again, it was so vague. Basically, if the working level talk can continue, then President Trump should have put some prerequisite, top-tier requirements there so that the rest of them can solve the problem. But then again, he didn't say anything, and even said his thought, putting in the terminology CVID was not opportune. It just suddenly changes the words, 180 degrees. Until last night, he said that was a must. Now it's sounding like a luxury. It's not a luxury, it's a must. Without CVID, the concrete timetable, the rest of it, just a gibberish, nonsense, because it doesn't have any executive power. They're talking about relationships, talking about economic development, and think about them. I don't think the United States is going to put any money in there. No, not a penny. Maybe us, Republic of Korea and Japan, are going to most likely make some investments. Even that may include retraining of those personnel, and then I'm really talking about those, again, 11,000 scientists and engineers who are going to be jobless quite shortly. Then what are we going to do about them? Are we going to export them out to somewhere? I don't think something that we can tolerate. It's just nothing. There's nothing we can do about it. So we have to be coming up with some kind of relationship between South Korea and North Korea that possibly we can absorb them to let them work on nuclear power for peaceful purpose, not military purpose. So it's going to be taking us a lot of time and money, and actually we are on the waiting side. And as far as DPRK is concerned, they didn't lose anything. Actually, they didn't have anything to lose to start with. And then it's amazing that the U.S. sort of made this kind of statements, and then even Mr. Trump had long, lengthy presser. And if you take a listen to him, there's nothing substantial to his statements, just a vague statements, and even talking about even G7, it was really not quite to the point. Right. It was just coming back and forth, and then again, I'm really trying to find some devils in the details, but even before details, there was no devils yet.
Right.
They are yet to be found, so it may take us a while to figure them out.
Right, he seems quite bent on justification of certain actions and defending himself over possible misconceptions from the outside looking in.
So I'm agreed. It turns out to be a historic meeting. I'm agreed, but other than that, there was no substance to much that could be attached to that kind of high name value meeting. So it is certainly missing that ingredient as far as my eyes were concerned.
Right. Once again, going back to the possibility of cooperation between the two Koreas, nuclear technology and experience, certainly North Korea has something to offer in the table in terms of their expertise and knowledge, their trials and tribulations and success and failures. South Korea, of course, we have a very proud track record in terms of nuclear power plant construction. That's one of our, I guess, exporting of our knowledge to overseas.
Exactly.
In terms of such possible economic ventures between the two Koreas, how do you perceive things unfolding between the two Koreas if the wall is brought down, and or even if there is a divider, they might be able to cooperate towards international projects or maybe local ones as well.
Okay, I do believe that it's a good approach coming from both ends, but then again, we have to be really facing the reality because the current government in the Blue House and the President himself are against development of nuclear power. It's essentially, we're in the phasing out nuclear program. So it's really hard to tell how to come by this problem because we have to be phasing in again. Then we can be talking about this collaboration between North Korean, South Korean engineers and scientists coming together and then really concentrate on the peaceful usage of nuclear power. Actually, that's something that's been done between basically Russia, which is old USSR, and the United States because they didn't know what to do about those depleted and actually dismantled nuclear warheads. So the idea was that they tried to, and they did, down-blended nuclear material from 95 all the way to 5%, and they burned them in the US reactors. And that's probably exactly what we have to do because they have excess material, highly enriched uranium, you just name it. So what do we do about them? It's pretty hard to dismantle them, and it's actually useful. And it's very hard to verify if they are really gone. The best way is to be burning them in South Korean reactors. There are 24 of them. So there's a good avenue for and path forward as far as North and South Korean engineers are concerned. But first of all, we have to be removing that banning of nuclear power. So we have to get by this problem phase out program. We have to do something about it. Then we can be talking about this potential
as you said,
high
the devil's in the
collaboration.
details, and we need to involve when we are putting out the fine prints. Right, moving to you again, Dr. Ru, it's certainly President Moon Jae-in has played a very crucial role as the mediator, the negotiator. How would you rate his performance so far, and how would you see his contribution towards the role of making sure there's an equilibrium between the very loud and very eccentric two leaders?
I think South Korea certainly has a role, not only as a mediator, but as a facilitator. I think facilitator might be the best word to describe South Korea's role in this case. So when Kim Jong-un knew that President Trump canceled the meeting in May 25th, that President Moon Jae-in met North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, and maybe probably President Moon Jae-in gave some words to Chairman Kim, and I think that kind of role can be crucial when there is almost virtually no trust between North Korea and the United States. So South Korea can interpret the others, what the other side meant when they say something. So even they exchange the harsh word against each other, that there's a South Korea's role to play to mediate between two sides. So I think that's what South Korean President Moon Jae-in can continue to do in the future, because now almost the only element that was agreed by the two sides today is that they are going to have a negotiation in the future. So that means that for the negotiation to be successful, there should be someone someone who can facilitate the process. So I think that President Moon Jae-in can continue to be as a facilitator in the negotiation. I think it's going to be a long negotiation. So South Korean President Moon Jae-in can facilitate in this long negotiation process between the United States and North Korea.